Many thanks for joining us on Worldview today. I am Emedion James. Let's take a look at the major stories that we have for you today. And I'd also like to let you know that today we are going to have a special report on the situation in Iran. But for now, let's turn the spotlight to the White House. Partial U.S. government shutdown enters third day as funding standoff continues. Gaza's key Rafah border crossing with Egypt reopens. Iran examines diplomacy with U.S. hopes for result in coming days. This and many more stories coming up on Worldview today. Please stay tuned. Many thanks for staying tuned. We begin today from Washington, D.C., where the partial U.S. government shutdown entered its third day today without resolution as Democrats continue to demand immigration reforms as part of any funding deal to reopen the government. Senate Democrats and Republicans agreed to a package of 5 spending bills on Thursday, but stripped out on a 6th bill on full fiscal year funding for the Department of Homeland Security. The Senate instead approved a 2-week funding for the DHS that gives lawmakers more time to work out disputes over its long-term budget. Democrats want changes to the immigration enforcement operation, including requiring agents to wear body cameras turned on and to not wear masks. The package approved by the Senate must now be cleared by the House of Representatives before it is sent to President Donald Trump's desk for signature. The Senate package includes funding for the Defense Department, the Health Department, the Treasury, the federal court system, and other agencies until the end of the 2026 fiscal year on 30th September. But reports say funding for these federal agencies ended at midnight on Saturday, resulting in a partial shutdown as the House is yet to approve it. The effect will be minimal, though, as many government services do not operate over the weekend. The House Rules Committee is expected to meet today to consider the funding package. We move now to the Middle East, where Palestinians have started to enter the Rafah border crossing between the Gaza Strip and Egypt after it reopened for the movement of people. The crossing has largely been closed since May 2024, when the Palestinian side was captured by Israeli forces. The long-delayed reopening is a key part of the first stage of the U.S. President Donald Trump's ceasefire plan between Israel and Hamas, which began in October. Only dozens of people will be able to cross in both directions each day. Humanitarian aid and commercial goods will still not be allowed through. It is reported that around 20,000 sick and wounded Palestinians are waiting to leave Gaza for treatment. Israeli reports say only 50 patients, accompanied by 2 relatives, will be allowed to exist each day, and that 50 of the tens of thousands of people who left Gaza during the war will be allowed to return. The World Health Organization will oversee the transfer of patients from territories under Hamas control, transporting them by bus through territory controlled by the Israeli military to the crossing. Still in the Middle East, we turn the spotlight to Iran right now, where details of various diplomatic processes to manage tensions with the U.S. are being examined by Iran. Now, this was said by Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismaili Bakir today, adding that Tehran hopes for results in the coming days. Now, this is amid a military buildup by the U.S. Navy near Iran. U.S. President was seen telling reporters last week that Iran was seriously talking with Washington hours after Tehran's top security official Ali Larijani said on X that arrangements for negotiations were underway. Today on our program, we are examining the growing crisis in Iran. We'll take a quick break right now. When we return, many thanks for staying tuned. Right now, we'll go into deep conversations about the escalating issues in Iran. Of course, if you've been following reports on Worldview on Spectrum TV, it's been said that ongoing protests and also mounting pressures on leadership and rising tensions involving the United States and the wider Middle East. Joining us to give more spotlight and also a more guideline and detailed guideline of this issue today is Awais Abbas, a lawyer from Govt, Pakistan, who will help us look at this event through the lens of law, governance and regional stability. Hello Abbas, good afternoon and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me in your show. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. So let's just hit the ground running. Let's start with the big picture. What exactly triggered the recent protests in Iran and how widespread are they across the country?
When Iran is discussed globally, the conversation is often driven by headlines, not law. As a lawyer, I want to frame this discussion strictly through international legal principles, not political emotion. The protests in Iran are multi-casual, but it is inaccurate to frame them as a unified movement for regime change. The primary and most consistent trigger has been economic pressure, high inflation, currency depreciation, and the cumulative impact of years of sanctions by the United States of America. These factors affect daily life and generate frustration, especially among youth and lower income groups.
Okay.
It is not accurate to say the protests represent a nationwide demand to overthrow the political system. Iran is a country of over 85 million people with deep ideological, religious, and regional diversity. Protesters do not speak with one voice. Many demands are reformist, not revolutionary, focused on economic relief.
Okay. Mr. Baz, there are also reports that these protests is mainly about a change in leadership. Some say it's because of the rising inflation and economic hardship, while others believe it is a deeper call for change in power. From what you're seeing, which of these is driving the protests more?
The protests in Iran are multi-casual. We cannot say the protests are being held to change the regime. It's basically happening in Iran due to the sanctions imposed, unilateral sanctions imposed by the United States of America. The people of Iran are facing economic distress. The economic distress is real. Discontent exists, but there is no verified, legally or politically coherent movement capable of replacing the state.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Abbas. So, of course, as you can see, as these protests spread, reports suggest hundreds have been killed and thousands detained. What do we know about the human cost so far, and how credible are these figures?
Any loss of civilian life is tragic and should never be dismissed. However, from a legal and evidentiary standpoint, the figures circulating internationally must be treated with caution. Most casualty numbers come from advocacy groups, opposition linked networks, media extrapolation. They are not result of independent judicial investigations or internationally mandated fact-finding missions. Iran disputes these figures, as do many states facing unrest. This disagreement is not unique to Iran. Under international law, particularly human rights fact-finding standards, number must be verified, cross-checked, contextualized, cause of death, location, actors involved must be found. At present, no international court or UN tribunal has issued a final binding determination on these figures. The danger lies in using unverified numbers as political weapons rather than on a basis for impartial investigation. As we know, law demands process, not presumption.
Okay. Thank you so much for that clarity. But that brings us to, how is the state responding so far? Because, I mean, from the protests that we've seen online, I mean, not minding the fact that the internet was cut off at some point, from the protests that we've seen online, and, you know, the body is covered with white cloth, how is the state of Iran responding to these?
The response of IRGC and other security forces must be understood within the legal responsibility of any sovereign state to maintain public order. From all credible and verifiable information available, the Iranian security apparatus, including IRGC, police, and auxiliary forces, has responded in a coordinated and institutionally controlled manner. Their actions reflect command discipline, not fragmentation. There is no reliable evidence of senior level defections, breakdown of command, or control. Rival security interests emerging within the state. In international practice, the existence of within a cracks exist within a regime is usually visible through public order defections of senior officials, refusal to obey orders or parallel chains of command. None of these indicators are present in Iran at this time.
Okay.
The Iranian government has taken full control of the ongoing situation. The public order, peace order is maintained, and the institutions are running smoothly.
Okay, according to you, the institutions that are really running smoothly. But then again, this is it, Mr. Abbas. Some analysts suggest that there are internal discussions about leadership change. How credible are these claims? And what would a shift like that mean for Iran's future?
These allegations are speculative and largely driven by media expectations rather than any legal or political reality. First, there is no verified evidence from any independent or institutional source that the leadership of Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei is on threat or is trying to change. What we are seeing is a misinterpretation of leadership style during periods of heightened security, not an absence of authority.
Okay, Ms.
An international law perspective, Iran retains its monopoly over the use of force, which is a defining feature of state sovereignty. This monopoly has not been legally or practically challenged. African states are familiar with this dynamic. During periods of unrest, rumors of security fragmentation often circulate, yet institutions remain intact. Media narratives tend to amplify isolated incidents into claims of systematic crackdown, a pattern we have seen repeatedly across regions.
Okay, Mr. Abbas, if you say everything is going very well in Iran, Why are the people protesting? Because we can see on TV, like, this is not like reports. We have seen videos of, instability in the region. If everything is going on well, why are they protesting? There are speculations that the protest is being sponsored by the US. How true is this?
Could you repeat the question, please?
If you say everything is going on pretty well in Iran, then why are the people so angry? Why are the people burning things? Why are the people calling for the end of the regime of Ayatollah? Now, there are also speculations that the US are the ones behind the protests. How true is this?
The United States has a long documented history of involvement in Iran's internal affairs, most notably the 1953 coup, which is no longer disputed even by US officials. In the present context, evidence does not point to US troops orchestrating protests, rather to indirect interference, which is still significant under international law. This includes open funding for opposition media platforms, support for digital circumvention tools, coordination with exile groups, information and cyber influence campaigns under the principle of non-intervention. Even indirect attempts to influence internal political outcomes violate international norms. So while protests are domestically rooted, external exploitation of unrest is neither new nor implausible. When senior US officials publicly endorse protest inside another sovereign state, it goes beyond humanitarian concern and enters the realm of political signaling. If concerns were purely humanitarian, it would be consistent across allies and adversaries, accompanied by calls for dialogue, not sanctions. Instead, such statements are often paired with economic pressure, suggesting an intent to influence outcomes rather than protect rights. International law requires neutrality in internal disputes. Selective moral outrage undermines credibility and fuels suspicion.
Okay, I'm very grateful that you are able to, address some of these allegations that have been said by most media houses. But there are also speculations again that the Supreme Leader, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah, has reduced his public visibility or is even in hiding. I mean, reports had it last week that he went, down into a bunker just to avert. There were rumors that the US were going to strike last week, even though Donald Trump called it off yesterday. How true is this? What can you tell us about his current role and present at these critical moments?
The rumors about Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei that he is hiding, it's a Western propaganda. These allegations are speculative and largely driven by media expectations rather than any legal or political reality. First, there is no verified evidence from any independent or institutional source that Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei is hiding. What we are seeing is a misinterpretation of leadership style during periods of heightened security, not an absence of authority. In modern governance, particularly during internal unrest or regional tensions, leaders often reduce public exposure and operate through institutional channels. From an international law and constitutional perspective, visibility is not a requirement for legitimacy. Many heads of states across Africa, Asia, and Western countries limit public appearances during crises without their authority being questioned. In Iran's system, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei's role is strategic and supervisory, not operational. Day-to-day governance is carried out by the executive, security institutions, and parliament. The division of responsibility is constitutional, not improvised. It is also important to note that rumors about leaders hiding are a familiar tactic during periods of political pressure. From a diplomatic standpoint, African states understand this well. Governance continuity does not depend on optics but on institutional stability. As lawyers and diplomats, we must distinguish between symbolism and substance. and between media narratives and legal reality. In international law, leadership is measured by constitutional authority and institutional continuity, not by camera timing.
Mr. Baz, I'm just happy that we're having this conversation and literally everybody listening to us right now because, I mean, what you're saying and what we've been from the reports that we've read is quite different. But some Iranians now believe that if Ayatollah is out of power, their economy might get better. What's your take on that?
Likely future scenarios for Iran, it is important to move away from dramatic binaries, collapse versus war, and focus instead on propel evidence-based trajectories. From a legal standpoint, the most likely scenarios for Iran fall into three broad categories, with control continuity being the most realistic. Control continuity with internal adjustment. The most probable path is institutional continuity accompanied by internal recalibration. Iran's political system has demonstrated resilience over decades, including during wars, sanctions, and sustained external pressure. The scenario may involve targeted economic adjustments, selective policy recalibration, managed social administrative reforms, continued emphasis on sovereignty and independence. The appointment of Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei is based on constitutional framework of Iran. These street protesters cannot change his authority. They have tried many times before. We have witnessed this in history. They tried to overthrow the regime. The regimes cannot be overthrown by street protest. The protests are under control, and the Iranians are currently having a healthy life. And Sayyid Ali Khamenei's authority is still on its position, and most probably, and the most important thing to now at this point is that the Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei's leadership is more stable and more strengthened due to this protest and external aggression by the American and the Israel aggressions.
Okay, Mr. Bhatt said that Iranians are healthy and happy. I'm just wondering, then who are the ones protesting? But then again, I think let's move down to the U.S. We can see that the U.S. has imposed fresh sanctions on Iranian individuals and institutions. Of course, you know that Donald Trump's favorite word is tariff, and tariff not just to Iran right now, but every partner or anybody partnering with Iran at this moment. Are these measures weakening the regime, or they are instead deepening the suffering of ordinary Iranians?
The stated objective of these fresh US sanctions is to pressure decision makers within the Iranian system. However, in practical and legal terms, sanctions rarely operate with such precision, and their primary impact is felt by ordinary citizens. From an international law perspective, it is very important to note that most US sanctions on Iran are unilateral, not authorized by the UN Security Council. This distinction matters greatly. Sanctions imposed without multilateral authorization lack universal legal legitimacy and raise serious concerns under humanitarian principles. In practice, affect access to banking and international transactions, importation of medicines and medical equipment, food security, and everyday economic stability. African and global South states have seen these patterns repeatedly. Sanctions regimes in various regions have weakened societies without practical transformation. In practice, sanctions disproportionately harm civilians. They raise inflation, restrict access to medicine and banking, collapse purchasing power. Most sanctions on Iran are unilateral. From a diplomatic standpoint, there is also a contradiction. It is difficult to claim concern for human rights while simultaneously imposing economic measures that intensify hardship for the very population one claims to support. Under humanitarian principles, collective economic punishment is deeply problematic.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abbas. I mean, I heard you say that U.S. sanctions are quite unilateral, which, I mean, of course, that's true. But then the U.S. has reportedly deployed a naval armada to the Middle East. What message does this send to Tehran? And how is Iran interpreting these?
The deployment is primarily a deterrence signal, not a declaration of war, imminent war. It is intended to reassure allies, pressure Iran diplomatically, shape negotiation leverage. Iran has responded with strategic restraint, avoiding direct escalation while reinforcing deterrence capabilities. Military posturing increases risk, not stability, especially in crowded regional theaters.
Okay, Mr. Baz, I think
And the most probable path is institutional continuity accompanied by international calibration. The military confrontation, whether direct or indirect through regional escalation, remains exist likely scenario through not impossible. Why it is unlikely? The cost would be catastrophic for all parties. Iran's doctrine is defensive and deterrence based, not on expansionist. Regional and global actors understand the destabilization consequences.
okay, Mr.
If
Baz.
it's if it, yes.
Yes, when you say, sorry to cut you short, but then we have just barely 1 minute to wrap this up. When you said consequences, what do you mean? I mean, Iran's supreme leader said today that if the U.S. strikes, there is every possibility that they will respond and there might be regional conflict. When he said regional conflict, and right now you're talking about consequences, what do you mean?
A full-scale war is unlikely because the cost would be catastrophic for all sides. Iran's doctrine is defensive and asymmetric. Missile deterrence, regional alliances, strategic patience. Iran is prepared to defend itself, not to initiate invasion. This balance has prevented war for decades, despite high tensions. And Iran has heightened security measures and containment. If external pressure intensifies through harsher sanctions, military posturing, or overt political interference, Iran may prioritize security consolidation over reform. In this scenario, the state focuses on containment rather than compromise. Civic space may narrow, external pressure strengthen hardline positions. This is not the preferred outcome because it is a predictable reaction to sustained external pressure.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Bass, for being a part of Worldview today. I'm so grateful for all the insights that you've brought on today's show.
Thank you so much.
And that's all we have for you today. And that's all we have for you today on Worldview. Do ensure to follow us on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Worldview happens every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This is where we keep you updated on issues happening in the world. And I do hope that you will be here with us same time, same station. To have a lovely day. I am Emidion James.